You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 577, where tonight we are going to take a look at Ahsoka. Now that it's been 1 year since it, more or less, just short of that, but it's been a year, and it's a time-honored tradition on this show to come back and take a look retrospectively at a show, at a movie, and really just kind of talk about, hey, does it hold up well? What have we learned since then? You know, are we seeing anything sprout because of it? And then maybe look ahead to the future. Although there's not a lot to talk about with this one, but we both had a chance to do a kind of a quick rewatch ahead of this show. And I think you're going to find our comments are probably similar in that vein. And by the other person, I mean, of course, who's with us tonight? Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah, this was actually a pleasant surprise rewatching this. How about you?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, when we did the rankings of our television shows, I said it was like, you know, my number two, right behind Andor. So I was really looking forward to this. Like, oh, darn, I've got to watch Ahsoka all over again. But I have a different take on that than I think I did initially a year later. I mean, it's still up there as far as number two, but my rewatch, end to end is a little bit different than what I experienced initially going through. But maybe I'll touch on that here in just a bit. Before we get started, I know you want to say thank you to some very special people.
Yeah, thanks to all of our Patreon members, now part of the tribe members in particular: Alex, Raphael, Danny, Mike, Borda, Lauren, Dante, Riss, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Rita Reborn. Our Delusions and Granger members, now this is Rod Racing, CJ, and Steve. Thank you all so much. If you're curious about Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon. We do bonus content at least once a week and deeper dives onto whatever we're talking about that week and other various things that come up. So I'm not really selling it. Sorry, I'm not really with it today very well.
All
but
sorts of things happen in
all
Patreon.
sorts of great stuff in Patreon and all sorts of stuff we're doing over on the Patreon app too. So, and then a quick welcome to all of the folks out in the live stream. If you're listening to this, thank you for the download. If you'd like to come out and join us in the live stream, get your comments up on the screen and get a quick shout out like these amazing people: Steph, One Up versus CPU, JJ Skywalker, Alex, Music Train, and Riley. So far, we see you folks in the background. We hope you'll come out and say hi. Let us know some of your favorite moments from Ahsoka. Like, what did you think about it? Have you watched it lately? You know, do you want to go rewatch it? Where does it rank within all of the other Disney Plus series that we've got? Where does it kind of fall there for you? Let us know in the comments, and we'll post them up on screen. And if you're doing this after the fact, you know, hit the like button and leave us in the comments and let us know what you think. We'll be sure to respond to those.
Yeah, and if you got comments or questions, feel free to throw them in the chat tonight. We'll try to get to those as we move through our kind of retrospective look on Ahsoka. So, with that, let's see. Let's talk about. Let's just jump into the show. All right, I'll let you start. I guess. What was your experience like watching it? I know you said you were pleasantly surprised. What was it that you were thinking about? I guess going in, what were you worried that you wouldn't be surprised about, and then what surprised you as you were watching it and as you came to a completion there?
I think sometimes when you rewatch things that you were like Ahsoka was solid, right? It was good. I enjoyed it, but whenever on the screen.
What happened there? Sorry about that.
Yeah. But yeah, whenever sometimes you rewatch them, you're like, is it going to be the same? Is it going to plot along? I know what's coming. So is it going to be slower than it was before? Is it going to hit the same marks? Are the emotional moments going to be, you know, lame? Or are they still going to like pull at the heartstrings and the things that they're supposed to do? And I was actually like, I didn't forget a lot about Ahsoka, but I forgot how much it was grounded in Star Wars. And when I thought about when I took a step back, I was about halfway through the series and I stopped and I was like, you know, if I think about all of the other Disney Plus content that we've had so far for Star Wars, this is the one that really feels the most connected to like the original trilogy and even the prequel trilogy of kind of that cinematic way that way of making movies, I think. But also some of what was captured in the cinematography. And I'm not saying it was perfect by any stretch, and there were definitely some areas of what we can talk about that could have been improved. But overall, it felt like the most Star Warsy too. The ship designs, it was very connected with Rebels, of course, so there was that connected tissue with all of the returning characters. And a lot of the themes and things just kind of kept coming back, which I think is probably what helped my enjoyment, and we're kind of reinvigorated my enjoyment for this series, which I hadn't really anticipated enjoying as much as I did. And actually, if I were to go back and re-rank this one, I think I'd probably give it another half point up, probably from where I left it before, right? So
yeah.
it was really enjoyable, and there's a lot of great moments. We'll talk about them tonight as we kind of go through our typical spiel for the 1 Year Later series. But this was a pleasant surprise, though. The characters, I think, still really worked for me. There were still some downsides, but there was a lot of great moments that I found enjoying more, especially like Hu Yang. I mean, I just can't get enough of Hu Yang.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, typically on this show, we do a by the numbers. So we kind of talk about, for sales, if it's a movie, we're going to get into some Nielsen ratings in just a little bit and kind of analyze that. And then we do kind of our good, the bad, and then the ugly. I have a lot of good and very little of bad. And I have one ugly, which is something I had to make up just because we have to come up with something, right?
I've kind of felt the same way. I didn't have any ugly, so I found the ugliest thing I could find.
Right. Same thing here. But other than that, I mean, yeah, there was something I'll kind of talk about my rewatch now, and then I'll save all the other stuff for a little bit when we get into the good part of it. But my rewatch was kind of weird. Watching the first 3 episodes, it did come across a little slower for me than I remember watching the first time. It's really not until Fallen Jedi that this show picks up. And then by the 5th episode, holy crap, like Shadowhunter, what is it? Shadowhunter? Is that the 5th one? I forget now.
Shadow Warrior, sorry. Shadow Warrior, that 5th episode, man, that is like, I watched that twice in this rewatch because I really enjoyed it. And I thought to myself after that was over, I was like, you know what? Honestly, and I'm not trying to be dramatic or over exaggerating anything, but as far as Star Wars television for me and like what checks the box for TV and Star Wars and just in general, like that's like up there. It's everything that happens. There's so much that goes on in that episode. Same thing with Fallen Jedi. There's so much that happens in that, but those two coupled together, I mean, it doesn't get any better. This show, in my opinion, peaks on that 4th and 5th episode. Yeah. And it doesn't really let up. Like even all the way to the very end. Yes, we kind of fall into Act 2 and it's a little bit slower trying to, come back from that, but eventually it picks up again. And I'm pretty happy with the ending, but man, it really does for me peak with those 2 episodes. So that was one thing that I noticed. The first 3 episodes were kind of, I wasn't bored, but it's just like, okay, come on, let's go, let's get going here. And then, man, Fallen Jedi, Carson Teva, Jason Syndulla, the Ghost is finally back. You got Hera being called Phoenix Leader, Sabine's decision there at the very end. And then it all ends with Ahsoka, right? And I didn't even talk about the Baylan Ahsoka lightsaber fight, which I thought was great. But it ends with that is the Anakin cameo or reveal, I guess you want to call it that. And yeah, it's just those 2 episodes are just phenomenal stuff, man. So I really, really enjoyed that. So, but it's interesting you say that like after Shadow Warrior picked up, because I felt like Far, Far Away really slowed it back down.
Yes,
it was somewhat temporarily.
Right.
But to me, I was like, oh my gosh, come on, let's get through this. It felt like it was a little bit plodding at times, but then whenever it finally did start to ramp back up, it was a sprint to the finish, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, no, I would agree 100%. Well, let's talk about the numbers real quick. And I don't really have a graphic to throw up here, honestly, but I did just want to kind of point out, like, in terms of like Ahsoka, I mean, the first episode did 829 million views. Okay, first off, disclaimer, we're only talking about the Nielsen ratings. It's just something that's available out there. There are lots of other factors, and this isn't a complete holistic picture of how much people tuned in, how long they tuned in. We're just using this just to talk about the numbers and kind of put an example out there. But in terms of the debut, it did really strong, 829 million views. Right. That's more than the premiere of season 3 of Mando, which is, no short order. Comparatively speaking, the Acolyte did 488 million. So it did double almost of what the Acolyte did. Where it compares to like Mando season 2. Mando season 2 did just a billion. So kind of hard to beat that one. You got Book of Boba Fett doing 389 million, Kenobi's 1 billion, Andor 624 million, Mando season 3 823 million, Acolyte 488, and Ahsoka 829. So top tier as far as television's concerned with the premiere episode. And then it does take a dip. It drops down to about 487, 459. Then it kind of normalizes there throughout the rest of the last 5 episodes, right around 575 million.
Yeah, not surprising, right? And Anakin and Thrawn show up, and
yeah,
everybody's back on board, right?
Yeah, and everybody gets glued and plugged in at that point, and they don't want to turn away. So, it's where that sits again, comparatively speaking. I mean, it's not going to touch Mando, of course, season 2. It's it's not as good as Boba Fett, believe it or not. I think people were kind of at least vested and wanted to know where that show was going to end up, so they were tuning in. Plus, we had Mando show up in that episode, that one, so
Right.
kind of unfair in some ways. But in terms of it didn't do better than Kenobi. It did better than Acolyte. And then it does better than Andor as well. But Andor has always been the proverbial slow burn. I think that's probably getting way more love and appreciation now that the series is over and we're heading into a season 2. So I guess all that to say, it did pretty well and it did consistently. I think these are the numbers they would want to see at a minimum, right? This feels like this is the minimum. I'm not going to say it blew it out of the water. And if I'm
Right.
Disney, I'm looking at this and going, well, it doesn't really kind of match up to even Kenobi. And it certainly doesn't match up to Mando seasons 1, 2, or 3. So do you think this is the line? Do you think 575 is that sweet spot that they kind of want to find themselves in? I mean, we don't really know because we don't know what the formula is, but
Right. A little bit unfair question.
it's a little
but-
unfair question. But anyway, what do you think? What's your analysis? What sticks out for you and jumps out for you when you're looking at these numbers?
Well, I mean, I think you hit on the head. I mean, I think the Andor season finale did outperform Ahsoka season finale by about 100 million.
Yeah.
So to be fair, Andor kind of came back strong all of a sudden, which was a bit of a surprise given the rest of the season, which was considerably lower. But I don't know what the line is. I think where Disney's going, I think is they're going to say, okay, what can we translate from this that had success and then put it in the big screen to actually get that firm return on the dollar, right, that we're doing. But I have a feeling that, yes, it's going to be a Kenobi, a Mando type of recurrence where they want to get to 800 to a billion type of views. I don't know if these are billion minutes or whatever it might be, but whatever the scale is here, I think they're going to want in that upper echelon, right, of being able to generate that. And if they could generate that in the movies and then come back and do something closer to that after the fact when it goes to home video or whatever back to Disney Plus, I think that's the perfect scenario for them. And I think Ahsoka's probably on the border of that. I think you have a marketable character. You clearly have marketable characters that people are interested in. Hence the resurgence and people sticking around for those last 3 or 4 episodes, which I think is actually pretty good retention, right? Because usually you see these numbers move a little bit more in that one. Mando season 3 was pretty stable the last few episodes, but usually there's a lot of wiggle and then people come back for the finale, right? And that's some of the things that Acolyte struggle with generating that excitement to come at the very end of it. But I think this is it's an interesting one to see what happens, right? It seems like season 2 for Ahsoka is kind of a guarantee. We've said that before, but it seems like this one probably will get revisited because I think there is some staying power. But will it be in the theater? Will it be at Disney Plus? I think is the broader question of this about what Disney wants to do and how much they want to keep throwing into these TV shows. Because Ahsoka, I don't know if we have the numbers of how much it cost to make Ahsoka, but it was still rather expensive to do, and you could see why, right? There's a lot of visual effects, not as much on location shooting as as a Kenobi, or not Kenobi, as an Andor or as an Acolyte, but still there was some of that, but a lot of effects and a lot of things. And of course, they had to bring back bigger name actors too to do some of their parts again. So, I don't know. Again, there's not really a good answer to the question because we just don't know what the strategy is with Disney and Disney Plus in particular. And I think that's part of the frustration for us to be able to anticipate what should we expect from Star Wars content going forward in general.
Yeah. On that note, I guess going forward, I do want to mention, so at Dragon Con, Natasha Bordizzo was there at one of the panels, and she did say season 2, season 2 has been greenlit. We know that's coming out. But they did say it wasn't going to start filming until the summer of 2025, which is considerably different than what we heard just a couple months ago. I heard that was, I heard it was about to, it was imminent. They were going to start filming this summer, towards the end of the summer. So does look like it's going to get pushed back about another year. Do you see anything in that? I mean, is there any reason to concern? I don't know that we got the reason. She didn't really contextualize as to why that was the case, but I don't know. I'm not really that worried or concerned, to be honest, given the strategy.
It probably makes a little bit of sense here if they're going to stage this after the Mandalorian and Grogu movie.
Yeah, right.
So you start doing it in 2025, you get it kind of ready in 26. The Mando movie hits in 26. Maybe you hit Ahsoka later in the year, maybe even 2027. I mean, so they've got to rebuild the funnel a little bit and restructure some things. And so I think that's probably what we're seeing a little bit more here. I would have, even with Mando Grogu coming out May 2026, I would have expected this one maybe to pull a little bit forward from that, starting of next summer. Seems a little bit long, but again, whatever they're trying to do, maybe they're trying to hit wherever they're shooting. If they're shooting on location somewhere, that might make a difference too. But But that is a little bit surprising. But I think if we're trying to plan, especially if this might become a movie, and if they're debating that, then I can I understand a little bit extra lead time, and then it'll actually take extra development time to get that into theaters, and then you start planning for either end of that year or the following summer for a release.
Yeah, I think it's really just solely based on Mandu Grogu, honestly, because
Yeah.
what became very clear and apparent to me is this is, and maybe, I mean, it was at the time, let's just be honest too. But as I was watching, I was thinking, this is a great way to set up whatever they want to do, like some kind of a movie or Heir to the Empire. I mean, he said it a few times. It was kind of hinted at a few times throughout the series. But whatever it is they're kind of working towards, this is a pivotal piece of it all. And so my guess is we'll probably get, Mandu, Grogu. That'll kind of set the stage for whatever that's going to be. And so should this come out as a TV series, it's going to feed off of that. Should it come out as a movie, it'll feed off it, whatever the case may be. So it makes sense from that regard. I think for us, you look at it, it's going to be almost 2 years since, by the time they actually start filming and by the time it actually comes out, which I would anticipate would be fall of next year, at the earliest, probably winter. I think you said 2027, maybe. I think that's probably in the realm, but I mean, that's almost 2 years out from when we got the end of this series, which seems like a, pretty long time, honestly, in the grand scheme of things. So
well, it'd be like 3 and potentially pushing 4. That's a really long time.
Yeah. And I'm okay with it, right? As long as they got a plan, they've got a strategy, they've got a roadmap. It's it's whatever. We've got plenty of other Star Wars here to kind of keep us entertained, I think. Until then,
it'd be nice if we knew what the roadmap was right now, but
yeah.
It's a little uncertain.
Yeah, we have no clue, no idea. Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about our good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's see. I know you kind of rattled off a few things. What else did you have in your good bucket list there?
Well, I think to go back to the theme of this kind of felt like Star Wars, I think some of the things that made it feel that way was the musical score for Ahsoka was absolutely fantastic.
Oh, 100%. Yep.
It was really good, really, really, really good. It felt, and I think that's maybe what made it too, because there were some of the themes borrowed a little bit from John Williams' material, but also very fresh and very new. The only thing I still don't really particularly care for, I kind of put it in the bad. It's not bad, but is the Game of Thrones ending score, like the Ahsoka theme. It just feels so out of place for some reason.
Bum.
Yeah, it's stuck in my head too. Thanks for bringing it back.
You're welcome. It's in my head too.
Yeah, so I keep humming it all the time. So it is very catchy, but it still is very Game of Thronesy, not as much Star Warsy, and it's very pleasing to watch at the very end of the episode, of course. But
yeah,
when you watch the season finale, though, you get kind of a more natural, like the score just feels more natural. It flows in from like what you had in the rest of the content with the end of the series, which is actually, it was like, oh, this kind of feels a little better, right?
Yeah.
But that aside, though, the rest of the score is absolutely amazing. And I think also the other part of this is the imagery that we got with this series. We talked about it when we reviewed the show. These space fights, like through the whale graveyard and through and when they're going in and out of the whales and the clouds and the green of the lasers from the ships, and some of that and the things in the Clone Wars flashbacks with Anakin and Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And of course, War Between Worlds, like the imagery you're getting of this is absolutely brilliant and beautiful. And some of the fight scenes in general are just absolutely stellar. We didn't have some of the gaps, I think, that we've seen with Mandalorian with some of the CGI. And I think this series did a little bit better job of some of that. Like some of the volume use is still a little bit quirky, but I think in general, I didn't notice it as much this time around. Like I think some of it was like in the forest. I may have noticed some of these issues in the past, but I didn't really notice them as much this time. And maybe I was more casual watching this because I more or less remember everything that was going to happen. But man, these space battles with the ships and everything and the sound that went with it, sound design on this was absolutely amazing too. The whole map room type of idea was absolutely brilliant. And then of course, we can't talk about imagery without the whole first episode. The first episode is still one of my favorites, I think, just because the whole beginning is just like straight out of Indiana Jones. And it was just absolutely perfect the way they did it. It was very sly. It was just very calculated. And I think Rosario Dawson really did a great job of kind of playing some of that up as she rotates some of the pillars and does all the lining up. Very Indiana Jones inspired. It was just a lot of fun to be able to see that. And, I think capture these moments of what makes Star Wars kind of fun and interesting, but also paying homage to some of the other works that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg have done that have influenced Dave Filoni and so many others.
Yeah. I want to touch on, you can keep going in just a second, or I got some more stuff here, but I want to touch on a couple things you said, because I too had the sound, the music, and the special effects as one of the highlights of the series. And it's hard not to compare this to The Acolyte, since we just came off The Acolyte. I found myself doing it the entire time going, why couldn't they have done this in this show or that in the other show, right? I was comparing them both and saying this one did better here than there and that kind of thing. But there is definitely something about the special effects in this one that seem well above what we got in Ahsoka. And then I started thinking about, like, does that say something about the consistency that we've had now?
In Ahsoka or Acolyte?
I felt like Ahsoka I felt was higher grade in terms of special effects than we got in the Acolyte.
You said Ahsoka. I just want to make sure I got it straight. Sorry.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But yeah, it's just above and beyond. And like the music, of course, Kevin Kiner, I know he's borrowing on John Williams, but he created a lot of themes himself that we got to see pulled into this from Star Wars, from Rebels, right? Which this is just another season of Rebels. I've said that so many times, which is why I love it and why it resonates with me. But yeah, I mean, and then so the music, the special effects, even just on my phone when I was, I caught myself having to watch a couple episodes in my phone, multitasking and stuff. I mean, it's just mind blowing just how well they did with the sound effects in this. So all of the technical aspects are certainly there in the show, and it's certainly a highlight for a lot of what's going on. The only thing that I felt like the Acolyte did better was the lightsaber fights. Like I did find some of the lightsaber battles, even really the really good ones that we got with like Baylan Skoll and Ahsoka, they weren't up to par with what we were seeing in the Acolyte. I mean, it's just, and that's credit to the choreography and all the work they did. We talked on and on about how much time and effort was put into those choreography fights in the Acolyte. And that's not to say anything that, these fights in Ahsoka weren't good. They were certainly good. They just weren't as good as the Acolyte stuff. Right. It stuck out for me, right? So again, I think we talked about, right? That's now the bar. That's the minimum that you need to reach. You should be aspiring to that at a minimum, I think, at this point going forward. We'll see. We'll see if that happens in like a season 2, or if, should they go the movie route. But yeah, let me see. I also had this one. The other comment I had that you kind of said as well is it felt like the most Star Wars-y show that we've ever had so far. I put that, and I put it above Mando, and I put it above, all of the series, even like Kenobi and stuff, right? There's just something about this one that is so steeped in and a lot of the reasons why we like Star Wars. And I say Star Wars like the core part of Star Wars, the George Lucas Star Wars. Obviously, that's a credit to Dave Filoni being that was his mentor, and we're seeing a lot of what he taught Dave Filoni transpire onto the screen and television format. So everything about the way things are cut and the action sequences and the drama that's there, some of the lines that they say, the little quirks and the quips and the when they're kind of going back and forth through some of the dialogue, there were a lot of lines, a lot of dialogue that were just almost lifted right out of the Star Wars movies, right? Everything from "Do It," and I mean, just lines like that were completely ripped and said in a different context, but you can't help but think, wow, I remember that from Return of the Jedi, or I remember that from Empire Strikes Back. So I did love all that. It just felt like very, very much steeped in original Star Wars, I don't know, feels. I don't know what the best word is for that, but definitely felt that throughout. Let's see. I think the other things I kind of want to talk about, just to kind of go into some more goods. There was one thing that I don't know that we touched on this during our breakdowns, and it stood out to me more so than the first watch and again our breakdowns, but Ahsoka's fighting style is very unique. Like, you compare that even with like Anakin, who you learn from, she doesn't do much of anything that Anakin does, honestly. There are some moments in there where she gets kind of fancy and you can see the Anakin her come out. But there is something very unique. And I credit this to, like, this is the natural extension of her training. Like, she's gone and developed this now, and she's kind of gone her own way. She's left the Anakin style of fighting, and this is her own kind of unique style. And it is more samurai. I mean, there's some of these moves are like right out of samurai movies. Everything from the way she was holding the sword back, she was holding it up at one point, right? All very, very samurai-ish. But there is something very unique about what Rosario Dawson and what the team have done to kind of give her own very unique fighting style. And I did appreciate that. I actually enjoyed it. I liked it a lot more And it didn't really stick out to me during the first run of this, but it did, and I thought I really enjoyed it. So I like where it's going. I hope she keeps up with that, and we get to see more of it. Honestly,
Yeah, she was very fluid. I think some of the motions were just very smooth, which I think is, in the animated series, and again, it's not fair to compare animated with live action, but I think in general, when you look at the animated series, some of the things that make Ahsoka so exciting to watch are just the really quick movements, but she's refined some of that and made them, while they're still quick-ish, and I think maybe that's a criticism on the show, is the fights didn't really feel as dynamic. They didn't feel as energetic, I think, as they could have been in many cases. But
yeah,
I think you still have that fluidity, and she's refined that to where it is a bit like, I love it when she does. I can't do it in here, but like when she takes both of them and kind of sweeps
rotates,
around, like so one's in front of her, one's behind her in the final fight with Balin. And there's moments like that though that, like, you're right, it's more the style and the aesthetic of what's happening, and and the maturity that comes with some of that too. That I think was a great moment for the character of saying, okay, pay homage to what she was as a teenager, but now she's much, much older, and it has a very refined style that goes with it, and have that mature with her in some ways.
yeah. Excuse me. I guess a general good that I had as well was really just all the Rebels references, and we've already done a good job of kind of calling some of them out. But my goodness, there's so much in this series that's just complete callbacks. And I want to, even in the very beginning where we got Kai and what's his name, the Chancey Brown's character. God, I forgot his name, but
Ziono.
No, well, we got Kaz Ziono. God, not Kaz, but Ziono, Kaz's dad.
Kaz's dad, yeah. From
what a
Resistance,
jerk.
yeah.
Ryder.
Ryder, yeah.
But I mean, stuff like that, right? References that were I would call them deep cuts, because the general populace and general public that's coming to watch this show is not going to know who the hell those people are.
Yeah.
But for us,
seeing Lothal in live action,
action,
the mural, of course, yeah.
Yep. It was just good, man. I really enjoyed all those references, and it didn't feel forced, right? None of it ever felt forced. It just kind of felt natural, as a natural extension of Star Wars Rebels. That's absolutely a good thing. But there was just so many of them, so many different kind of nods and winks and little stuff that was hidden here and there. I did enjoy too, like, I want to go back to Shadow Warrior, because I know I've already said that was probably my favorite. It probably is my favorite Star Wars episode of anything now at this point. And I'm saying that because I just watched it all again. But there is something about, I want to credit Dave Filoni, because I know we've said he's not always been 100, he hasn't always hit it out of the park, either in writing or in directing live action, right? But I felt like this was the best he's ever done. Like that episode, Shadow Warrior, in terms of the writing and everything that happens in that episode, and everything that he does directing wise, I should say, are just like next level stuff. And I think, if I remember correctly, when we broke this episode down, I said it felt like Rian Johnson. And I mean that in the best of ways. There's something about the cinematography. There's something about the way he sets up shots in both of those episodes, but primarily in Shadow Warrior, that felt like a very, like, some of the tutelage that he got from Rian Johnson when he was on set during The Last Jedi. It does feel like a lot of that was translated and brought to life in his own, image, if you will, during that episode. So, credit to that episode. I just thought it was really, really phenomenal. And I would say this too, when people ask me like, hey, what's the Ahsoka series like? I've been telling them, you got to get to episode 4. Like, hang in there. You may not exactly know what's going on. They're going to be throwing a lot of stuff at you, but once you get to episode 4 and 5, it's pretty much smooth sailing at that point. So, if you know anybody that has not seen the series or is still holding out, I would recommend that as some advice. But what else? Any others that you had as far as your goods go?
Oh yeah, I have several here.
Okay, good, because I have like 4 more, but go ahead.
Yeah, same. Hu Yang, right? I mean, Hu Yang was absolutely brilliant every moment.
My goodness.
Like, David Tennant just did an amazing job. The humor, the delivery of the lines, the sincerity though that also came with it. His interaction with Ezra as he's building the lightsaber and talking about Kanan.
Oh,
uses Caleb, right, instead of Kanan. And it gives him the same emitter sleeve or whatever at the top.
Yep.
That Ezra could then use. It was a really fantastic moments, and he was such a great character that you just couldn't get enough of. Every time he was on screen, he just kind of stole the scene, the way that they brought him into it. And even telling stories and saying a galaxy, a long time ago, a galaxy far, far away, was so appropriate. And I know some people thought it was a little cringy, but I actually thought it was really appropriate and actually really cool, and it made so much sense, and it was appropriate for where they were going. And I thought it was just I thought it was a little tongue in cheek, but it was also pretty clever. And to make it work so well, I think is a credit to Dave Filoni's writing, and actually Filoni's writing in general throughout the series. I thought was actually really solid. And I'll talk a little bit about. I put it as a bad, but it's not really a bad. But some of the directing type of stuff. But Hu Yang though is absolutely like one of my favorite characters in the show, just because every single scene he had something, like the banter with Ahsoka whenever the ship was going down, like when she was going to jump out of it.
Oh,
I felt really bad about that, didn't I? No, you didn't.
No, you didn't. Yeah,
it was just great moments between them, and Hu Yang just stole the show. David Tennant absolutely killed this part.
Yeah. My Star Wars guy says it didn't feel like they were trying to be a Rebel sequel. It felt like it was a Rebel sequel, if that makes sense. No, it does.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, you call it what it is, right? It was a season of Rebels, an extended season of Rebels, especially with the way it ended. I mean, we got Ezra back, and I don't know if it wasn't Shadow Warrior. It was the one after. What was after Shadow Warrior? Far, Far Away?
Far Away, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the way that ended, I mean, that ending was basically the ending of Rebels, the series, like the finale, right? With the Purrgil, everything from the music and taking off. I mean, it's very emotional. But yeah, I mean, it was just lifted right off of it. So I would definitely agree. They weren't really hiding or trying to be too tongue-in-cheek there.
Yeah. Another huge positive on the show was, I think, Baylan Skoll, Ray Stevenson again, absolutely amazing role. Every time he's on the scene, especially the later you get into the episodes, like you talk about like telling people to hang around.
Yeah.
If you don't really know what's going on with Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati, wait till you get a little further in. It's a little disappointing we didn't get further into that story, but what we got from Baylan Skoll was absolutely amazing. I think when we talk about sequences, like the opening sequence in the hallway when he's batting the lightsabers and the music that goes along with it, absolutely killer. It just really captured that spirit of Darth Vader, like you've just got this ominous person coming through, and also really did overmatch Ahsoka throughout the series. Every time they fought, just a true match for her. And we've seen Ahsoka just basically take everybody on. Even Darth Maul, like even the most challenging of opponents, she's disposed of them rather easily. So that she has someone that she's facing that she can't get over all of that, and that's also poking and prodding about Anakin, right? And saying no, not many would see what he would become. And it's just those are the moments that you really remember, and you feel like are just a lot of fun and bring kind of the series to life. And you just have this character you kind of keep centralized on the bad guy side that keep the story moving. So Thrawn and Morgan Elsbeth can kind of play their more of like the chess handler piece, that role within the show, and you have Shin and Baylan kind of being the direct antagonist, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's as difficult as it is to say, both Ray Stevenson as Baylan Skoll and Hu Yang, when they're on screen, you can't help but just be glued, and you're captivated in different ways, very different ways, right?
Right.
But there's something, and I would agree, like everything about Hu Yang. I mean, the minute David Tennant starts speaking, you can't help but just smile, and everything he says is glorious, and it was absolutely wonderful, and it was a perfect way to kind of bring Hu Yang back, especially now that we got him in live action. And, he could continue to be a character for years and years and years. I mean, hell, he could show up in the New Jedi Order with Rey. I'd love to see something like that. I think we kind of talked about that at one point.
Still 75% of his original
part. 75% of his. You hit that. You quoted that like at least 3 times in our breakdowns. And when I heard it and saw it, I was like, he's going to say it again tonight. I know he's going to do it. But yeah, so Hu Yang, great stuff from David Tennant. Agree. But there is something so freaking commanding about Baylan Skoll and Ray Stevenson's performance, and it is absolutely gutting. Again, I know we all went through it when it happened, but to see him and that for our friend Ray, that message that pops up at the very end of first episode.
I forgot about that. I was like,
and then just seeing him on screen, and then culminating with the ending where he's standing on this statue of the father from Mortis. I mean, it's just like, it's just so good, and he is so good. The way he delivers lines, and lines that really, I mean, he'll say like one word or 2 words very short, very quickly, and there's still something very commanding about it. It's just that presence that he brings. When he whips off that robe, when he's about to fight Ahsoka there on the map there on, what was the name of the planet?
Cetos.
Yeah, on Cetos. And that robe is just kind of flowing. Like, dude's a big guy, man. Like, he's huge, right? So he's just another character. He's a different kind of character. It's so intriguing to know that he was a general at some point. we didn't really get to understand exactly all of that. We don't know what his relationship truly was with Anakin Skywalker. Did he know him? Was he just aware of him because of what was going on? All this stuff that, it really just begs a lot of questions about what are we going to see in a season 2, or what are we going to see if they, pick this up in a movie? How do, now that he's gone, I don't know. We talked about this, I think, during our kind of, it was either on the Patreon show or it might have been on our final kind of last episode about whether or not do we want to see Ray Stevenson come back as CGI or refaced in some way? Do they recast him? I don't know, and I don't really have a strong preference, honestly, because this is where I felt like this is another Star Wars character that is bigger than the actor, and I say that only because Ray Stevenson brought that character to life. So that one's a little tough. I don't know. Where do you stand on that? What are you hoping to see outside of a glorious beard when we get into a season 2?
Well, as long as we hit that part, we're in good shape, I think.
I mean, that ticks the box right there. It's 90% of what you could look for. I know, but
it is 90%. But I think I'm firmly in recast camp. I think it just, as much as Ray Stevenson brought to the part, it was one season, and the part wasn't huge from a time on screen type of thing. He was there a lot, but it wasn't as much to it as like an Ahsoka or a Sabine or someone like that. And I think you can, with the look of Ray Stevenson, I think you could probably imitate that well. Now, the performance and the delivery is going to be the hard part, right? You could get someone that kind of looks like him, but can you get someone that has the chops to be able to bring what he brought to the screen, especially, like you said, where we leave off the series of him standing on the arm of the father and bringing up and dropping this mortis bomb on us, right? Of what he's actually pursuing in this volcano with this light in the distance of whatever he's chasing, right? So those types of things are going to be critical for them to hit if they recast, like who can deliver the stuff that he was doing, because he would go from a very serious person and then like this kind of whimsical, look, looking off of like, I missed the idea of the Jedi Order, right? And it just that range, it was really subtle and small, but worked so incredibly well. And how do you replace that is going to be really difficult. I don't envy Dave Filoni and company to be able to do this, but I think recasting is the better solution here, because I just don't think that any of the other options really do it credit. In this way, it kind of preserves Ray Stevens' legacy in the show, and we're not trying to imitate it in that way. We can bring a new character on, or a new actor on, and say, hey, kind of make it your own, pay homage, but you can kind of make it your own and take it to a new level, because we don't know where the story's going to pick up either. So that might still work better if there's a bit of a flash forward, or if there's some time that's passed or something like that.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It really is tough. That one still hurts. Here we are more than a year later. It still hurts to see all that. Let's see. I had in here just the to kind of there were some other just little things. And this goes back to the Rebel stuff, but seeing Jason Syndulla live action, I thought that kid did a great job playing him. Who was that kid? What was his name?
He actually had the part that he played in it too of fighting Ahsoka was actually really well done, I thought.
Yeah, that's what I was saying too. Evan Whitten is the actor's name.
Yeah, I think
good job, young man. He did a really good job.
Yeah, he did. It was just really great how they wove him into the story, though, and it was a meaningful way that why he was there with Hera. I think it was a little bit more than what I would have expected in the series. I think we expected him to be more cameo material, show up and then disappear. He's off with Chopper or whatever. But no, he actually played a very important role in that Shadow Warrior episode.
I actually burst out laughing literally when Tu Yang's walking him back to the ship, and Carson Tevez he's the son of Kanan Jarrus, who was a Jedi, and Carson Tevez like, okay, I don't know what any of that means, but fine. I get, there was something about that was just really funny.
Well, right. He was like, you trying me to be a Jedi? No.
Yeah, that was a good
lose his lightsaber? No. And then Jason's too young to travel between galaxies, like with Hera's line, which I thought was really well done too.
Right. I was going to be petty or shallow and say that Mary Elizabeth Winstead was just a thirst trap the entire series, but we can talk about that after the show. Ezra,
they certainly made some of the female characters very alluring to look at in many ways, right? So whether intentional or not, they have become memes and in photos on the internet. Yes.
In all seriousness, I thought she did a great job. Like, I know she didn't come.
She did. It's a tough role to step into.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's not an easy role to fill. I get that, right? But I thought she did a really good job as an older Hera and someone who's now got a kid and has got mom pants and everything else that they did with her in that show.
Yeah, but she still has like that authority that goes with her, and I think the responsibility of everything goes with it, and be able to bend the rules. Once a rebel, always a rebel. Yeah. I mean, those types of moments I think still were captured really, really well. I love the interactions with Mon Mothma too.
Oh yeah.
And then of course the Leia name drop when 3PO comes in
3PO
too
comes
to kind
in.
of save her butt. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then Mon Mothma switching it over. Like, I don't know what game you and Leia are playing, right? But
Yep.
what is going on? Is this real or not?
See, and these are the things, like these things that we're bringing up that seem just like cameos, but they actually are meaningful. This is where I felt like it was the most Star Wars. It felt very rooted in that fabric of the original Star Wars, outside of the story and what's happening, you know, pacing and plotting wise, but just the way they were kind of the way they wove in all of this other stuff that's been happening in other television shows and movies and stuff. It was beautiful to watch and witness.
Right.
But yeah, maybe this is my last one here.
I've still got 3 more. Shoot.
Okay, well, I'm going to summarize. I mean, I've got other moments of the Noti or whatever they were.
Yeah.
Thrawn's entrance and the song, right? There's all these just great moments, and I think we covered a lot of those in our Patreon, like top 3 moments of Ahsoka. But the ending, I just want to talk about this just really quickly because I did feel like this was a very good ending. Like, especially as a Rebels fan, it did a lot for me. Ezra's home. You know, Morgan is dead. That was pretty shocking. Or is she? Right? She's a Dathomirian witch, so I'd imagine she's going to come back. But Dathomir is back. You know, we got to see them probably repopulating the witch planet and see. You know, we'll see what happens from that. Thrawn is back. He's finally back in the galaxy. Is now an official threat in the galaxy. Ahsoka and Sabine are master and apprentice. It was something they were teasing at and working at, you know, story-wise throughout this whole thing, and they finally kind of came together in that final episode. And they're together, and she said that line about, "I'm never going to leave you as your master," right? Because Anakin never did that to me. That is a great way to end it. Now, they're stranded, but, you know, whatever. I mean, you can't have everything. And then just really the Mortis part of it, right? That idea that Peridea is somehow tied to Mortis and Balin's skull. I mean, he made so many comments about, you know, starting over and really wanting to restore order and, you know, all the little things he was hinting at. And we're not going to talk, we don't need to tease all that out now because we've done so many episodes on that, but just the idea that there was something larger than just power, all right, in his mind, reshaping that Jedi Order or doing whatever he was going to do by going to Peridea, assuming Mortis or the father or the son or the daughter or maybe mom, I don't know. That is all super intriguing, not only as a Rebels fan, but certainly as a Clone Wars fan, as, you know, Mortis was first given to us in the Clone Wars. So I just loved the ending. I thought it was a great way to ending. And the last thing about that ending, that is my last thing, I promise, that as far as my goods go, is the way that ended with Anakin Skywalker. And my last thing I'm going to talk about is Hayden Christensen, because there was something about this rewatch that did something for me about it. So I'll kind of leave it at that. I loved everything about that final ending. And then what else do you have? And we can talk about Hayden Christensen as well.
Yeah, so World Between Worlds and Anakin, I think was great to see back on screen, and we'll kind of save that for when you're going to go back to Anakin. I think Thrawn, yeah, he's back. What I loved about Thrawn is that he was ruthless, and he reminded you that he is absolutely ruthless, right? For those that have been reading the books, you kind of feel like he's almost a good guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you watch the shows, you know that he is not the good guy. He's an interesting bad guy, and he has a lot of honor and things that go with him. But also, you see how he turned that on its head, right? That he guarantees that Sabine, like, he'll honor Balin's agreement with her. But that doesn't mean that once they find them, that he can't go and kill them then, right?
Sure, right.
So I love that was there too. And again, witches, witchcraft, and dark magic, sorcery, zombies, love it all, actually. I love that they brought this in because this was a kind of a callback to, it was a Rebels episode, right? Where they resurrected the dead. Yeah, it was a Rebels. Like, they resurrected the dead. So we know this is kind of a thing, right? In the Dathomirian witches. But to bring this all back and have the thread of fate, I mean, these things that now kind of tie with Acolyte a little bit too, right? So it's really cool to be able to see that connected tissue, but also just see some of these on screen and what they do, the markings that they give Morgan Elsbeth, the sword of Talzin.
The gift of shadow, yeah.
Yeah, the gift of shadow, right? Yeah, the blade of Talzin, I guess it's called, right? The sword. And so just, you know, those wonderful things that come through from honoring the legacy of the Dathomiri witches and kind of being able to see their home planet. But I'm so glad that they're back, because I think there's such an interesting dynamic to Star Wars and a counterpoint to the Force and Thrawn's use of them and continually calling on their dark magic, because that's something he's not had at his disposal before. And so I love that he's kind of embraced that side of it, where he's always been very, very hesitant about anything that's kind of in this thing he can't really explain too well. And, you know, you get him once, you're not going to get him a second time, and he's adjusted, you know, well.
Yep. Cena Camara was amazing in my opinion.
Yeah. Good call there, Rob. Yeah.
Especially with the paint job that it had as it flew over.
Yeah. Now it's got gold grills. So upgrades.
Yeah, right.
All right. So let's talk about Hayden Christensen.
Well, yeah. And all I'm going to say, honestly, I've got a lot to say.
He was great.
He was great. All right. Next thing. No, honestly, like, I don't think I appreciated Hayden Christensen coming back in this series as much as I do now. And I say that because, again, I was going into this series as truly a Rebels fan, which, Anakin really wasn't a part of, right? Vader technically was a part of it in a couple of episodes, but not Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker as we got him in the Clone Wars. And even though he was in, 4 technically episodes, he had the 2 flashbacks. He had an appearance in the first one. He had the full flashback episode. Later on, he shows up as a hologram. And then we get the little cameo at the very end where he's the Force Ghost and Sabine feels his presence around, right? There was something really cool about seeing him and appreciating what he did to bring back Anakin Skywalker from the Clone Wars to live action, and it's more than just the costumes. It's just the way that his mannerisms were, way he was channeling some of the animation itself at times. And then just really the whole story with him and Ahsoka, right? Her dying and, him basically saying, if you don't fight, you're going to die, right? I always interpret that as she went into limbo, which happened to be the world between worlds. And he was there as a way to say, look, you can choose to die, you can choose to live, but we're going to go through these lessons. And I loved how all of those lessons really made Ahsoka stronger. She came out as Ahsoka the White. And then later on, she took those lessons and applied them to her own apprentice, her own Padawan in Sabine, and gave us that kind of nice little ending there about, hey, I'm never going to leave you, because Anakin never left me, even when everybody else did. But there's just something like, I don't know, something super special about what he brought, and everything he did on screen, was just absolutely perfect. I have nothing bad to say about the way he delivered lines, the way his choreography was, the look. I didn't even mind. The only thing that even came to mind was the de-aging they did when he did the little cameo. But by the time we get into that next episode, it's unnoticeable, right? It's almost flawless in a lot of ways. So, big on him. That guy just continues to just impress people more and more, honestly, every year. And every time they bring him back, it just gets better and better. So I really, really appreciate that Filoni wrote him in there. And I appreciate what Hayden brought back to live action for Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, and to be able to channel both Anakin and Vader too, right? I think it was
yeah.
That dichotomy and being able to switch, between the two and that demeanor. Of course, the visuals too, like when they do the lightning flash, both when he's walking away, when they're on the planet, when it's young Ahsoka, but then also when he's coming at her, and you just start to see him flex and roll the shoulders, and then you see Vader flash. I mean, it was just, that's like a chilling moment type of thing, and it was really powerful to be able to see that. Like, holy crap, here comes Darth Vader, all of the Darth Vaders, both the Anakin version and the actual, metal menace type of character too. So, but to be able to see all of that with Ahsoka and then the kind of the mind games that go with World Between Worlds, it was really fantastic. And I'm with you. Hayden Christensen just did a great job. There were certain lines in there that they wrote that were very, very Clone Wars Anakin, right? And Hayden Christensen did a really good job of bringing those to life, and making sure it was still Anakin of the way that he's played it, not Matt Lanter, but at the same time, it was a nice blend of the two.
Exactly.
And I think visually, the only one I had a bit of an issue was the really younger one where he's got the hair parted and it's the red and the blue tunic and stuff. That was the only one that kind of looked a little off to me. I thought the rest looked just fine, right? And I thought it was really a good job. The Vader look was a little bit maybe overdone on the makeup, a little too pale of the skin, but it got the point across. I think that's the important part, right? So but yeah, well done to him, and it was really cool to see it. And that interaction, you do feel like you got at least a little bit of closure between them, and that's clearly what Ahsoka needed as well, as much about her journey as Sabine's in this series.
Yeah, the last thing on that, you said something I forgot to mention, the idea that Anakin Skywalker is now truly, the balance of the Force, being able to balance the good and the light. I love this idea that is truly him. He can channel Vader and he can channel Anakin Skywalker, and he's okay with it, right? He's in the middle, and at any point he can call that up, those beings or those presences or those enigmas, if you will. He can call those at any point. So it was all great stuff from Filoni, and I do like that interpretation. If that's truly what he was going for, of course. Maybe we'll find out more. Maybe Ahsoka will have more conversations, or maybe they were hinting at the very end that Sabine can see him, right? Wouldn't that be interesting if, he suddenly is able to kind of talk to her and Ahsoka, now that they're on Peridia? I mean, we don't know what the rules of the Force are when they're out there.
Well, she could sense him. I don't know if she could see him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, what if it matures into something more than just? I mean,
well, if he's a Force
Skywalker
ghost,
could only hear him, could only hear Ben, and then later on he was able to see him manifested. So maybe.
Yeah, maybe so. Let's get into some of the bad stuff.
Well, I don't have a lot of bad. Like the show's already over because I've already said like this is hard for me. I was really struggling to come up with stuff that I thought was bad, and I could nitpick a lot of things, and I'm not going to do that because it's just not worth it. It's not material enough. I don't know. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I will. So I think the fight sequences in general were pretty slow and sluggish compared to what we had with Acolyte, right? Yep. So it's not really fair to compare it now. But I think we had some of the same feedback and comments, and I think many of our listeners did, and other people out in the Star Wars fandom had similar thoughts of like the fight scenes seemed to be a little more, I don't know, deliberate is one way of putting it, but I think they were just a little bit slow. And I don't think this is the actors necessarily. I think I would attune this to editing, and this is kind of where one of my criticisms is a little bit the editing of inconsistencies. You're going to get this when you have different directors coming in, and they had several directors that directed this series, right, including Dave Filoni. And so you do have some of those differences between them. Sometimes they're more apparent than others, and I think sometimes you get really amazing shots. I'm not saying that they did a crappy job of directing this thing, because clearly there's some absolutely fantastic shots, like we talked about, like when they're on CTOS and they're scanning down the pedestal down to the broken map, right?
Oh,
it's
yeah, where
really
it's cut in half.
Yeah,
Yep.
really well done, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some of the fight scenes, they just don't seem to capture it as well. And I think, unfortunately, they seem to be mostly when it's like Ahsoka for some reason. Like they pull back and you see more of it, and the motions just aren't as fast. And I think this was really apparent at the very end of the series where she's blocking blasters and things like that. And you're so pulled away, and it just feels like there's not a lot of energy behind her movements. And you could say, well, she doesn't need a lot of that. We could explain a lot of it away. But from an entertainment aspect, it felt a little bit, it just didn't feel as interesting, right? And definitely nothing compared to like animation, which again isn't fair. But compared to what we came through with Acolyte, that, like you said earlier, that bar is raised.
It exposes it. Acolyte exposed a lot of the fighting in this one for sure.
Yeah, it did. Now there were some really great fighting moments though, and I thought the last fight between Ahsoka and Morgan Elsbeth was really good.
Oh my God,
that was the best one that Ahsoka was in. That Rosario Dawson did, I thought. Sorry,
I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was just gonna say Deanna Lee Inosanto, like, she's the real deal, man. Like she made Rosario Dawson's choreography better, right? And maybe that's part of it. I don't know what it is. It's a lot of what you're saying I get, because when she's by herself and she's kind of deflecting bolts, it looks a little lazy and sloppy at times.
Right.
But there is something that Inosanto brought that elevated the fights, and you can just see it. I mean, she's such a badass with that sword. I do hope they bring her back, because she's good for Star Wars in that way.
Yeah, my Star Wars guys are saying that when they're fighting the dead troopers, not the death troopers, but the zombie troopers, I think that's where you see it the most exposed, right? Mm-hmm. But again, there were other moments where it was actually really good, right?
Yeah, it's the inconsistency. Yeah. I would agree. Yep.
Yeah, so I think that's editing, a little bit of directing that was probably fell a little bit short there.
Steph says Book Thrawn is better than Show Thrawn, by the way. I don't disagree. I would agree.
Well, it's probably not a fair comparison. Like, you get so much more time to develop the character. But that's a whole nother conversation when we do a Thrawn dissection or something like that. I think the only other really maybe nitpicky thing is, I think similar to Acolyte in some ways, and this is I mentioned this with the Acolyte, this is becoming a theme with Star Wars, is that we open up a lot of potential paths and a lot of potential story, and we don't explore them. So Balin and Mortis is one of these stories, and then we leave it off, and there's definitely going to be a season 2, you know, and then it goes for a long ways before we actually get a season 2, and then in the Acolyte's case, we're not going to get it, right? So that part. And again, maybe it's that raw emotion still that's coming off, that we're not going to be able to see some aspects of the Acolyte continue on, or they'll have to be done differently, I guess, or in different forms or fashions. And then we're going to have to wait so long for Ahsoka. And those things kind of bother me a little bit. Yeah, we kind of tidied up. This series tidied up, fairly well. I think to your point, it did have a lot of good closure. It did feel like the end of like kind of this Rebels things, but a lot of open-ended things. And I don't know, I'm kind of ready for like a movie or a TV show to like say, here's everything you kind of got, and then introduce you maybe to something a little bit newer that is the teaser for second season, rather than dropping it all the way through the series thinking you're going to get a little bit of it and then you don't. And with Balin and Shin Hati, it was along more the lines of what are they chasing and what are they actually doing? And then when you see Mortis, if you don't know what Mortis is, you got to go find out, which is cool.
Sure.
But also that could be a little bit frustrating too, right? And also, you kind of drop that on and then you leave it, right? That's a great cliffhanger. But anyway, I get a little bit nitpicky because I think the series did a pretty good job of not doing too much of that, but it was certainly there.
All right. Well, here's my bad. Do you know what my bad is? It's the same bad I had last year, and you guys, like, you have to be nice to me, please. I mean this in all love and sincerity, but I still
It was Chopper.
No,
Chopper was bad.
he was awesome. Chopper's always good as well, even though he had some didn't have a lot of lines, but the lines he did have were really great. Okay, I liked Ahsoka the White. I did. And I thought it was better. But there's just something, it's the same problem I had when I was watching the series. It's the same problem I had during
Socks
Mando.
and Star Wars.
Huh?
Socks and Star Wars.
No. It's just I want Ashley. I don't know else how to say it. There's something about Ashley's presence and her performance. And I'm not even talking, it's all audio, right? Because that's all we got from her. But it's the way she delivers the lines. And there's just something about this Ahsoka that I don't know. I miss the chippiness. And even at the very end of the Clone Wars, when things were going absolutely horrible, there's just still something always positive and bright and, full of life that Ashley brings to it. Maybe it's just her voice itself. I don't know what it is. But Rosario Dawson, especially until we get to Ahsoka the White, like, a lot of the lines are just delivered kind of flat. There's too much, holding, and she's too much thinking about stuff. Her the way her body movement, and we chalk this up as to, okay, she's been through some stuff, and that's fine, right? I can write it off as that.
She was pretty subdued in Rebels too, though.
Maybe, but there was still, again, I'll take it back to the voice again. There's just something about the way she delivers the lines. Yeah. There's something different about it, and I've not really been able to articulate that very well. I'm going to sound like I hate her. I do not hate her at all. I do not hate the Ahsoka that we got in this TV series, and like I've already said so many times, Rebels is my favorite Star Wars thing ever. This is like my second favorite, next to Andor, Star Wars television ever. So I say all that, but I was watching and going, oh yeah, I didn't like any of this part. I didn't like the way she did this, or that didn't feel like Ahsoka to me, and yada, yada, yada. It got better though. It did get better by the time we got to Ahsoka the White. And certainly, she seemed to have much more, she was smiling more. She was more lively at times. But it's just, that's my bad. And it's not a big bad. Like, again, we force ourselves to pick stuff like this, right? So it's just, I had to pick something, and if I had to rule out or point out one thing that was still kind of just nagging at me and something I just can't put my finger on, I would say it is the performance of Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka at certain times throughout the series.
Her performance in Far, Far Away, I thought was the peak. I think to your point, like where she has this freedom, she has that closure with Anakin. She's looking at things differently. She's laughing, she's smiling. She's like, I don't know, I don't know the answer, but it's forward, right? And we're moving forward. That moment right there in that sequence with Hu Yang, I was like, okay, this is fantastic. This is like her really kind of finally rediscovering Ahsoka Tano, right? And I'm with you though. The rest of it does feel a little bit different and weird. We knew that kind of going, it was going to feel that way, and I've been able to get past most of that though.
I know you've done a better job than I have.
Yeah, I think from an on-screen perspective, Rosario Dawson, I think, has captured it, especially I think Rebels Ahsoka, who was a little bit more solemn and a little more serious and things like that. And I think based on her experience with what she's chasing Thrawn and with Sabine, I'm not trying to defend all of this, by the way, but I think it makes sense that that's kind of the performance we got and what she was channeling. But I can understand where you're coming from. It's really difficult to disassociate Ashley Eckstein with Ahsoka Tano because she is Ahsoka Tano, right? Right.
Yeah, and they both are, to be fair, but they still feel a little different and disconnected from me in some ways. So
yeah,
all right.
Fair enough.
That's all I'll say. You can guys go back and watch all the other shows where I pissed everybody
Rob
off.
hit on the head here. Come on, Albert. Just admit you were upset they couldn't find a way to get Hondo make an appearance. Yes,
it is the one thing that this series fell short on for sure.
I don't know how they did. Well, it's season 2. Mark my words now. Season 2, Hondo will be there.
He's coming in
Guaranteed.
Something.
Now that Ezra's back, Hondo is back.
My boy is back.
He's
right. He's gonna come. He's gonna find him.
I'm so excited.
All right, let's end it on our ugly. What did you have for the ugly?
the hungry zombie death trooper, just because it was chopping. It was gloriously gross. I loved it, actually. I thought it was fantastic, but it's the only ugly thing I could really, come up with. I thought this was really cool. I'm glad they did this. I'm glad they brought zombies into Star Wars.
Yeah, it was
for
really
whatever
good.
reason. I'm not a zombies guy, but it was just funny and fun, and I love it with the witches and everything.
And I remember we talked about this during the breakdowns, but Kiner, what Kiner did with the violins, the plucking of the violins kind of stuff, that always evokes, zombies and undead or scary stuff. And so it was very appropriate to kind of hear that when that scene
Did you
was
see
playing.
the one in the background? Like, one of the stormtroopers came up, it was like leaning back and then like snapped up.
Oh, no, I didn't.
I don't know
catch
how
that.
the actor did it, but the actor was like, like literally reclining back at, I don't know, maybe like a 20, 25 degree angle, something like that. And
Yeah.
then was able to snap himself upwards or whoever it was. I was like, holy, it was in the background. I just happened to notice it. I was like, you're kidding me. I'm like,
I mean, it's a craft at this point. There's so many zombie movies and television shows. I mean, they're probably actors that specialize in portraying zombies, right? And so they've got that little switchback move down
all
pat.
right, what was your ugly though?
So my ugly it first started off as, man, the Dathomirian witches on Peridia are really ugly. And then I started thinking, like, what is their bathwater like? Because they are gross. So that's my ugly. I don't know where we'll ever find that. But they're disgusting to look at, honestly, compared to, like, they look different than the Dathomirian witches that we saw in Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, but maybe that's
animation.
intentional.
Yeah,
but
the animation stuff.
I don't think they bathe, quite honestly. Let's see.
Alex coming in here though. Oh,
Well, I was going to do
Skywalker.
JJ's. They should make Tales of the Jedi episodes about Ahsoka training Sabine between Rebels and Ahsoka series, and they're falling. That is a fantastic freaking idea.
That's
Would
a
love
great
to see
idea.
that. Yep.
Yep.
Good job there. Alex, ugly, eating, drinking off the dirty coffee table. He was really bothered by that, I think, when the series, when we saw that episode. And then also no Rook. Wow.
Well, yeah, Rook's dead, so that makes sense. And he's not resurrected yet. So maybe, Alex, you could maintain hope. Maybe he's in one of the catacombs, or he was in the catacombs.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe Thrawn brought him with him somewhere.
We can
Yeah,
only
he's
hope.
not. He's dead.
All right, well, let's end it there. Hey, why don't you say thank you to some really great people that joined us for this fun episode. It was really fun to talk about this.
Yeah, thanks to the folks on the live stream. Steph, One versus CPU, JJ Skywalker, Alex, Music Trade, Riley, My Star Wars Guys. Appreciate you all coming out. If I missed anybody, not intentional. CantinaCast.com/YouTube if you'd like to come out and join us.
And this Sunday, we are going to be doing a Patreon show. Lauren and I first are going to be talking about the High Republic. We're going to talk about the last 3 or 4 issues from the High Republic run with Cavan Scott. This is the to be continued until 2025. So we'll wrap that series up. And then right afterwards, Jonesy and I are going to jump into a super high concept show that we're doing where we're going to break A New Hope up into episodes as though it were a television series. And then we'll rank those and talk about why we made stupid decisions to end an episode and start one wherever we did. And so that'll be Patreon only. And if it does really well, like I said, we'll do another one. And if it doesn't, you'll never hear us do it again. So there we go. What else we got? Wait, hold on. We got Gustavo chimed in here. It says, how far do you think the series and future Star Wars productions will go on this new galaxy? Will season 2 give us a lot more about it, or is it only a plot device for all that we've seen in season 1? You want to take that one?
That's a great question. I think it's going to be a matter of what do they want to do with Mortis? Like, how does this actually fit in? And I think with Abeloth, and if Abeloth is the creature, if that's the path they're going to go, then the problem we have with all of this is you have Thrawn and the witches that are going to make life difficult for the New Republic. And then you have whatever Luke Skywalker is doing. And then we didn't hear about any of this stuff like going into the sequel trilogy. So does it feel like we did a lot of things in between that were really galaxy bending when it feels like we had a relative period of peace in the New Republic before the First Order came out? So some of this is going to feel a little crammed together. So I think the Mortis stuff is probably going to stay out there on Peridia. But it would be really interesting, though, if Ahsoka and them have to take care of it themselves, or if there's any way to get maybe a Luke Skywalker involved. But I think this is probably going to stay out there, and then the rest of the galaxy will have to figure out. There's almost going to be like a war on 2 fronts, I think.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. And honestly, had you asked me this before they kind of pulled back on the television shows and when they were still kind of marching down some path of, heir to the empire, if you want to call it that, it did feel like the Mortis stuff was going to be self-contained. Like season 2 of Ahsoka was really going to be about Ahsoka, Sabine, and all the stuff that's going on there in Peridia, and that would kind of be the landscape. On top of that, they would cut back over to stuff that was happening in the galaxy, but that was more of a setup for, you know, another television series or a setup for the big movie, or maybe that was going to be the Grogu Mando movie or something. But it did feel like we were going to be separated, because I don't know that you would bring these two together. They do feel very separate, and that was probably deliberately, honestly.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, that's kind of where I sat. I hope we see more. Honestly, I do. Even with Baylan Skoll, or I should say Ray Stevenson, gone, if they do a recast, they could still hold that together. I think the real big factor is what happened to all the future plans that they had originally, especially with, you know, Rangers of the New Republic and some of the other stuff that they already had planned. You know, how have they reworked a lot of that? And now, in light of everything that's happening with Disney and the shift from television as well, so I think that's going to play into it there. But okay, on that note, Jonesy, anything else that you want to throw out there or say before we get out of here?
No, thanks for coming out.
Cool. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see y'all on Sunday for the High Republic and our Patreon show.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.